In medieval Europe, losing your memory was not treated like a dead end. It was treated like a spark that might be coaxed back to life. Imagine a dim chamber lit by tallow candles. A worried family watches as an apothecary turns a small wooden box toward the light, preparing powders and syrups meant to stir the mind. Rather than explaining forgotten thoughts in modern terms, physicians of the time pictured memory as something housed in the body's humors and even influenced by the air, the blood, and the spirits. So if it faltered, they believed it could be awakened again. Now the story turns to a healer's hands. A mortar grinding dried herbs into a fine dust, a cloth straining a bitter infusion, and a careful spoonful measured with the same seriousness as a prayer. Some remedies were symbolic as much as medical. Charms, carefully inscribed tokens, and written verses pressed into wax, placed near the patient's pillow as if reminders could reach the mind. Other treatments were grounded in everyday early medicine, steadying the body's balance through rest, warm baths to calm agitation, scented fumigations to clear the air around the sick, and gentle purges or soothing drafts designed to correct whatever was thought to have gone wrong. Then, in the next room, you see a more intimate practice, quiet coaching and structured conversation, where the patient is guided back to familiar names and routines, as if memory could be retrieved by rhythm and repetition. The healer watches closely for signs of return, a blink that lingers on the familiar face, a hesitant phrase that sounds like the start of recognition. And when it fails, the same logic drives the next attempt. Another herb, another symbol, another method, because for them, forgetting wasn't simply loss. It was a condition that demanded persistence and hope and careful craft. Follow the trail of early treatments, powders, smoke, wards, and bedside rituals, while you watch the ancient belief behind them. Memory could be called back if the right combination of body, environment, and symbol was found. Why memory loss was mysterious in early medicine. When physicians in early Europe encountered a person who could not remember names, prayers, or recent events, they often described the problem as something that had gone out of order rather than as a fault with an organ alone. Memory loss seemed mysterious because everyday life already relied on habits of recollection, reciting scripture, keeping household accounts, naming kin, and the sudden failure of those patterns felt like a disruption of the person's inner order. Clerics and practitioners alike believed the mind and body were bound by invisible influences, so forgetfulness could be treated as an imbalance brought on by illness, shock, grief, or lingering poisons in the body. In many medieval medical writings, memory was commonly treated as a faculty that could be affected by heat, cold, dampness, or the thickening of the humors, the bodily qualities thought to shape thinking. A mind that slowed, drifted, or stalled was therefore approached through regulating the body's condition, warming what was thought cold, cooling what was thought hot, and restoring the proper balance that allowed the faculties to function. People also framed memory as something that could be unsettled by fear and spiritual disturbance, meaning a patient's terror, nightmares, or shame might be considered part of the same illness that produced confusion. That mixture of bodily and moral explanations made the condition feel uncanny. It was not only the loss itself, but the sense that the inner thread of remembrance could be tugged loose. Because the cause was often believed to be mixed and uncertain, treatments aimed at awakening memory through symbolic and physical means that could be pictured by the healer and understood by the patient. A practitioner might draw a neat circle or draw signs on parchment, then place it near the patient's head while speaking consoling words or short prayers tied to clarity of mind. Others used aromatic herbs, bundles of rosemary, sage, or lavender, set near the bed so the room filled with a steady scent, as if the fragrance could coax the wandering faculty back to attention. Some households prepared gentle warming drafts flavored with honey, bitter herbs, or warming spices, meant to help restore lightness to the head and make thoughts move again. Even when the patient was too frightened to participate, the visual ritual of incense, clean linens, and a calm voice was treated as medicine in its own right. Expectations about early recovery were shaped by how symptoms changed from day to day. When a patient could suddenly recall a family name after days of blankness, the improvement was interpreted as proof that memory had not vanished forever, only needed the right conditions to return. Healers sometimes paired bedside care with structured recitation, repeating prayers, catechism lines, or simple verses aloud to retrain recall, as if guiding a candle flame back into steady light. To strengthen this reawakening, attendants might also keep the patient in a consistent routine, quiet hours, familiar prayers, and gentle conversation, so that cues of safety and pattern could act like stepping stones for a mind searching for its own trail. In that world, forgetting could be both a medical mystery and a solvable confusion, something that might be coaxed back through regulated humors, soothing rituals, and repeated reminders until the threads of memory gathered again. The methods doctors used to restore memory. In older European medical thought, a person's memory was treated less like a sealed record and more like something that could be stirred back into usefulness. Doctors believed that illness could dull the mind when the spirits and internal humors grew thick, hot, or imbalanced, leaving thoughts sluggish or unreachable. When an afflicted patient could not recall names, places, or duties, the aim was often to rouse the faculties rather than to analyze where the remembering had gone. Care was taken to present forgetfulness as a sign of hidden disturbance inside the body, which meant treatment naturally focused on warming, cleansing, and restoring the mind's proper balance. One approach centered on change of temperament through the body's heat. Physicians spoke of melancholy, vapors, and choking fumes that could rise toward the head, so they prescribed measures intended to clear the mind's air. A patient might be seated beside a brazier where mild fumes drifted up, not as a medicine in the modern sense, but as a calming, cleansing atmosphere guided by older practice. Strongly aromatic remedies, often simple household herbs, were burned or steeped so the air around the patient felt alive and sharp, meant to drive away the fogged feeling the household associated with a clouded head. Alongside this, cold and stagnant signs were countered with warm infusions, sometimes offered in small sips to encourage steadier attention and a return of remembered habits. Symbolic actions carried weight too, because memory was imagined as something tied to the ordering of life. A doctor might ask the patient to recite prayers, repeat familiar verses, or recount the day's routine in a careful sequence, using ritual as a scaffold for the mind. In some households, charms were used beside prayer, such as small written phrases kept near the bedside, believed to keep the right thoughts close. Visual cues were practical. A room might be arranged with known objects, book spines, a family token, a well-worn tool, so the patient could point and name what belonged to each corner of life. The logic was straightforward in that era's terms. Reminders placed where the eyes could reach them would help the mind find what it had misplaced. Herbal remedies were also woven into these efforts, frequently chosen for their perceived effects on the head and breath. Leaves and seeds with strong scent were prepared as teas or decoctions, intended to cut through stagnation and encourage clear thinking. Some remedies were applied as poultices to the temples or the nape of the neck, where warmth and fragrance could soothe discomfort and draw attention back inward. Oils and salves made with fragrant plants might be gently rubbed on the scalp, because the skin and the spirits were thought to communicate, carrying influence toward the seed of thought. Even when a physician's explanations differed, the scenes were often similar. A small bowl of bitter infusion, a warm compress laid carefully, and the patient watched for the first faint signs of recollection. Not all treatment was gentle, since older practice sometimes treated memory loss as a bodily disorder requiring direct intervention. Physicians sometimes used purging, bleeding, or other means meant to remove the cause from the body, reflecting the humoral view that excess had to be expelled. When appetite and sleep were poor, they might offer soothing drafts to restore rest, because a clear mind was expected to follow good sleep and calmer humors. Counsel from family and clergy mattered as well, since mental strain was often understood as a spiritual and temperamental condition, not a mystery of the brain. As the patient was brought back to regular rhythms, meals, prayers, and familiar conversation, the hope was that memory would awaken again through repeated, orderly contact with daily life. Did these treatments help patients recover? In medieval practice, loss of recollection was often treated as if the mind could be stirred back into order, not by starting over, but by waking a capacity that had gone dim. Scribes and physicians described memory as something housed in the body's inner warmth and humors, influenced by the breath, the spirits, and the condition of the head. When a person seemed unable to recall names or past events, caretakers were more likely to look for imbalance, dampness, or a troubling disturbance in the head than for a permanent, untouchable absence. Whether these efforts truly helped is harder to judge than the desire to try, but contemporary accounts suggest that some patients improved in small, uneven ways. Relief often appeared as partial return, knowing familiar places but not earlier details, or responding more clearly after sleep and steadying routines. Yet many stories also describe repeated setbacks, where a patient who seemed to wake during one moment grew confused again later, especially with stress, fever, or poor nourishment. Care was therefore less about a reliable cure and more about repeated attempts, each aimed at encouraging the mind to regain its thread of recollection. To make the idea of waking the memory feel tangible, practitioners used symbolic gestures that visitors could understand even when outcomes were uncertain. A caretaker might trace letters in dust or ink with a cloth wrapped around the patient's finger, then recite familiar prayers or family names, watching for changes in attention. Another common visual practice was to place a small charm or written verse near the bed, paper, parchment, or an amulet, because words tied to faith were believed to act like signals that could rouse buried faculties. Alongside that, some attendants used gentle stroking motions along the forehead and temples while speaking calming phrases, treating the head as the seat where the knots of forgetting could be loosened. Herbal treatments followed the same logic. Restore the balance thought to underlie the mind's steadiness, then offer the memory a chance to reform. The most believable, early bedside methods included warm infusions and thickeners, plants steeped in hot water or wine, strained, and given in small measures, because warmth was associated with reviving internal heat. Remedies with pungent, aromatic leaves and resins were prepared as teas or syrups, then applied indirectly as steaming vapors near the patient's head, intended to draw stuck humors upward and clear the fog. In some households, a cloth dipped in a fragrant tincture was warmed and placed over the brow for short intervals, while the patient was kept quiet to reduce agitation believed to scatter inner spirits. Alongside herbs, ordinary physical care could look like medicine because it was tied to everyday beliefs about the body and mind. A practitioner might recommend rest in a dim room, a regulated diet, and careful sleep schedules so that the head would not be overburdened by bad humors or emotional disturbance. Bloodletting appears in many medical traditions of the time, and even when used cautiously, it carried the notion that relieving excess could restore clarity. The results were mixed and depended heavily on the person's underlying condition. If the patient also showed signs of fear, despair, or agitation, caregivers often leaned on religious reassurance, repeated prayers, and steady companionship, convinced that a troubled spirit could obstruct the mind's recovery. Did these treatments help patients recover? Some did, at least enough to be recognized by family. Recall of everyday routines, clearer speech, and a return of familiar recognition after careful attention and repeated daily care. Others showed no lasting improvement, with symptoms persisting or returning, because the underlying problem might not have been reversible by warmth, words, or herbs as the practitioners expected. The most honest conclusion from the period's practices is that they sometimes improved attention and comfort, and occasionally brought partial memory back, but they rarely offered dependable, permanent recovery. Still, the very effort, combining symbolic speech, herbal warmth, and structured reassurance, shows how firmly people believed memory could be awakened again if the body's state and the mind's spirit were tended carefully enough. In a candlelit study, the physician lifts a small wooden box of notes and says, almost hopefully, that forgetting might be more than loss. It could be a veil pulled over the mind. In many medieval books of medicine, memory was treated like a faculty tied to the body's humors and to the condition of the spirits that moved through the head. When a person lost recollection, healers did not blame a single broken organ. They looked for a disturbance. Thickened spirits from an unbalanced body, vapors rising to the brain, or an inner unrest that unsettled the mind's order. So the ending shows a careful, believable attempt to wake, what was still there. At the bedside, the patient is guided through gentle routine. Fresh air from an open window, warm cloths at the temples, and a calm voice that repeats familiar prayers and names. Nearby, an herbalist crushes rosemary, sage, and lavender into a mortar, letting their sharp scent fill the room, believing that fragrant herbs could clear the head and steady the inner motion. A simmering decoction, thickened and warmed with honey, is offered in small amounts, while another mixture is prepared for a soft fumigation, steam rising from an earthen bowl so the smoke can travel upward, naming the air with soothing smoke and intention. Then comes the symbolic practice. A simple parchment is placed under a pillow or pinned beside the bed, copied verses or a short set of words tied to the patient's life. The healer asks the patient to trace the letters with their fingers and recall scenes tied to them, not by force, but by rhythm and repetition, as if memory might return when given the right cues and the right calm. The doctor keeps careful attention on bodily balance too, a warm compress, a measured diet, and, in some cases, the cautious use of bloodletting or purging, done only when the healer judged the humors to be out of order. Even when results were uncertain, the goal remained the same: restore the body's harmony so remembrance could reappear. We see the patient's eyes focus for a moment, fingers pausing on the page, a breath slowing, a name catching in the air. The story doesn't claim a miracle. It shows a common medieval truth instead. Memory was treated as something that could be stirred back, encouraged by scent, warmth, prayer, patience, and the belief that the mind followed the body's condition. And as the candle gutters, the scene lingers on the idea that healing was often an invitation to return, not just a diagnosis. If you want to follow what came next, how later centuries changed these efforts, and what replaced rosemary smoke and repeated prayers in the long search to restore memory, keep watching for the next part.